It was a crisp autumn day in Denver, Colorado, as the leaves transitioned from vibrant greens to shades of amber and gold. The bustling streets were filled with the energy of a city that never seemed to sleep. At a cozy cafe on the corner of 12th and Broadway, Emily Carter, a 32-year-old marketing executive, sipped her caramel latte while reviewing the notes for her upcoming presentation. Her golden brown hair framed her face, and her bright blue eyes sparkled with ambition. Across the city, in a luxurious suburb, Jack Thompson, Emily's husband of 5 years, was engrossed in a conference call that he had been preparing for weeks. At 35, he was an ambitious software engineer with a promising future at his tech company. To the outside world, their life seemed perfect: an enchanting home, steady income, and a blossoming social life. But beneath the surface, a storm was brewing. Jack had recently been working longer hours, often returning home late. It was a shift Emily had noticed, but attributed to the demands of his rising career. Little did she know, Jack's late nights were no longer about work. They were about someone else. Sarah Miller, a vibrant and alluring co-worker, had entered their lives and had begun to capture Jack's attention in ways he would have never imagined. One Thursday evening, after a particularly long day at work, Jack finally got home, his mind racing as he thought of Sarah. "Honey, I'm home," he called out, only to be greeted by silence in their otherwise lively home. The faint sound of the television playing in the background signaled that Emily was likely engrossed in her favorite show. As he walked into the living room, he found her curled up on the couch, wrapped in a soft blanket. "Hey, you're late again," she remarked with a teasing smile. "Another late work night?" "Yeah, just the project with the server updates," he replied, forcing a smile. As they chatted about their day, Jack felt a pang of guilt in his chest but tried to push it away. He had dinner plans with Sarah that night, and even as he spoke with Emily, he felt his heart race in anticipation. Later that evening, after Emily had gone to bed, Jack slipped out, telling himself it was just a casual meet-up with a colleague. Yet, as he drove to the trendy downtown bar where they had agreed to meet, he couldn't help but wonder about the path he was choosing. Meanwhile, Emily lay wide awake, her mind racing. She had a feeling recently that something was off. Jack had been distant, and their once passionate connection seemed to flicker like a dying flame. She tucked her hair behind her ear, tried to shake off the feeling of unease. Was it work stress? She questioned, willing herself to trust her husband. At the bar, Jack and Sarah laughed and flirted over cocktails, the ambience filled with music and laughter. As the evening progressed, the blurred lines of professionalism began to fade. Sarah, with her long dark hair and infectious laugh, leaned closer to Jack, her intent clear. Their conversation shifted from work to personal stories, and the undeniable chemistry crackled in the air. Jack knew he was crossing a line, but felt powerless to stop. In that moment, he convinced himself it was harmless. After all, he found solace in the fact that he wasn't technically cheating, right? Sarah leaned in closer, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "You're such an incredible guy, Jack. It's hard to believe you're married," she said, her voice dripping with allure. Jack's heart raced. "Thanks, Sarah. You're amazing too." The moment felt electric, and as their eyes locked, he felt an attraction he hadn't experienced in years. It was thrilling yet terrifying, and it purported to shift the very foundations of his life. But as the evening wore on, Jack could feel the creeping dread of the choices he was making. Back at home, Emily's restlessness got the best of her. She grabbed her phone to check the time. Wasn't a little late for Jack to still be out? Guilt gnawed at her heart like an unwelcome guest, and she yearned for the trust they once shared. But she shook her head, dismissing the feeling. "I must be overthinking it," she assured herself. Yet, as she closed her eyes, the unease lingered. What if something was wrong? That night marked the beginning of a descent into chaos, a bitter path into betrayal that would unravel the lives of both couples. As Jack initiated a dangerous game with Sarah, the fragility of love and trust began to shatter, setting the stage for heartbreak that no one saw coming. In the weeks following that fateful night at the bar, the affair between Jack and Sarah quickly transitioned from playful flirtation to a full-blown relationship. They met under the guise of work meetings, spending countless hours together, sharing secrets, and stealing kisses in the back of dimly lit restaurants. Each moment with Sarah brought exhilaration. She filled a void in his life that he hadn't recognized existed. Yet, with every stolen moment came a growing burden of guilt. Back at home, Emily tried to connect with Jack. She initiated weekend plans, suggesting they take a short trip to the mountains, hoping to rekindle their fading romance. "It'll be nice to escape for a bit," she said with a smile, her eyes hopeful. Jack agreed, masking his internal struggle, manipulating his schedule to avoid arousing her suspicions. Yet, during those moments together, he felt his heart pull in different directions, between the comforting familiarity of his marriage and the intoxicating thrill of his secret life with Sarah. "I can't believe we have this beautiful place to ourselves," Emily exclaimed, her enthusiasm palpable as they settled into a quaint cabin in the Rockies. Several miles away from civilization, it was the perfect escape. The mountains stood tall and imposing, a beautiful backdrop contrasting with Jack's inner turmoil. As Emily prepared a romantic dinner, Jack sat on the deck, staring out at the breathtaking view but feeling the weight of his deceit. Emily approached, bearing a warm tray of roasted chicken and vegetables. "I set everything up indoors. We can enjoy the fire," she said, her excitement infectious. Jack feigned interest, but his thoughts were elsewhere. Later that night, they cuddled in front of the glowing fire. Emily nestled her head on Jack's shoulder and sighed contentedly. "I miss this, just being together," she murmured, momentarily catching Jack off guard. Guilt consumed him as he looked down at her, her innocent smile contrasting with the dark secrets he harbored. "Yeah, me too," he replied, forcing a smile. But in that moment, as she casually mentioned plans for the future, he felt a tightening in his chest. He was betraying more than just her trust. He was betraying the love they had built over years. To escape the intensity of his thoughts, Jack excused himself, retreating to the bathroom to collect himself. Staring into the mirror, he had an overwhelming urge to confess, to come clean about his affair. The reflection looking back at him held a facade he was tired of maintaining. "What am I doing?" he whispered to himself, yet the thrill of his double life was too intoxicating to relinquish. In stark contrast, Sarah was becoming increasingly restless. Even though she enjoyed the thrill of their affair, she began to crave more than just fleeting moments and whispered promises. "So, Jack, when do you think you'll tell Emily?" she asked one evening as they lounged on her couch after indulging in a lavish dinner. The casual question hung in the air like an impending storm. Jack paused, uncertainty washing over him. "I'm just waiting for the right moment," he said uneasily, but his tone lacked conviction. Sarah's eyes narrowed, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "You know, I don't want to be the other woman forever. I deserve more than this," she insisted. Her words hit him hard, awakening a part of him that had remained dormant. What was stopping him from leaving Emily? He pictured his life with Sarah, a life filled with passion and freedom. The thought was tempting, intoxicating even, but it was also terrifying. Emily was still his wife, after all. Over the next few days, the emotional tug-of-war intensified. At the cabin, Emily attempted to connect deeply, sharing dreams and aspirations. "I want to start a family soon," she revealed one evening, hope radiating from her. Jack's stomach nodded. A family? The thought felt heavy, laden with responsibility. How could he ever bring a child into a world built on betrayal? That night, as they lay in bed, Emily reached out to hold Jack's hand. "Promise me we'll always be honest with each other," she murmured softly. Jack squeezed her hand, but remained silent, wrestling with his conscience. Eventually, they returned home, and Emily resumed her routine, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just below the surface. Jack knew he had to confront his reality soon, but each moment of hesitation felt more consuming than the last. Meanwhile, the emotional tension between Jack and Sarah reached its peak. Wanting to know where their relationship stood, Sarah decided to confront Jack at the office. "Are we ever going to make this official?" she asked during a stolen moment in the break room. Jack fidgeted, knowing the truth but choosing to tread lightly. "I need to sort things out first," he replied, trying to navigate her expectations without igniting her anger. As they stood there, part of Jack craved the passion and excitement Sarah provided, but another part felt suffocated by the weight of his lies. As Sarah exited the break room, her frustration palpable, Jack wondered how long he could balance these two worlds without everything collapsing around him. The choices he had made draped over him like a shroud, and he knew the impending confrontation with Emily loomed ever closer. With each passing day, the truth felt like a ticking time bomb, and he anxiously awaited the moment it would explode, forever altering the course of their lives. Spring in Denver brought with it a sense of rebirth, but for Jack and Emily, it felt more like a slow march toward an inevitable confrontation. As nature bloomed, so too did Jack's internal conflict. With each passing moment, his guilt grew heavier, a tangible weight pressing down on his chest. He found himself questioning everything he believed in, cycling through moments of clarity and denial. Jack continued to see Sarah, their meetings filled with flirtation and intensity. Yet, after weeks of living this dual life, the thrill was starting to fade, replaced by a gnawing sense of unease. Each time he met with Sarah, he felt the layers of secrecy pulling him further from the person he once was. His marriage to Emily, filled with love and tenderness, was becoming a painful reminder of the facade he had built. One evening, Emily surprised Jack with a candlelit dinner. "I wanted to do something special for us," she said, reminiscent of their early days together. As they dined, Emily opened up about her hopes for their future. "I've been looking at some houses nearby. Wouldn't it be nice to settle down properly?" she suggested, excitement dancing in her eyes. Jack's heart dropped at the mention of settling down. How could he commit to a future when he was betraying her in the present? "Yeah, that sounds great," he said, forcing a smile. But inside, a tempest raged as he thought of Sarah, the thrill and danger of their affair pulling at the edges of his conscience. After dinner, as they sat on the porch, sipping wine, Emily leaned against Jack. "You know, I've been thinking about us a lot lately. I feel like we've grown apart, and I don't want that. We need to reconnect," she said softly, her vulnerability disarming him. In that moment, Jack felt layers of guilt wash over him like cold water. He reached for her hand, but the ghost of Sarah lingered in every unspoken word. "I'm here for you, Em. I promise," he said, but the truth sifted through his fingers like sand. The following days were a blur of confusion and inner turmoil. At the office, Sarah, sensing the growing distance, pressed Jack about their relationship status. "I can't keep doing this if you aren't serious about leaving her," she insisted, frustration bubbling. "You need to make a choice, Jack," she added sharply, searching his eyes for commitment. Her words struck a nerve. Jack had always wanted to believe things would resolve themselves, that he could navigate this treacherous path without choosing sides. He knew he couldn't continue living this lie, yet the thought of losing both women terrified him. With each passing day, tension mounted at home. Emily began to notice Jack's distracted behavior, the way his phone buzzed with messages he dismissed too quickly, or the moments he stared off into the distance, lost in thought. She confronted him on multiple occasions, but Jack assured her that it was just work stress. But the deep connection they once shared felt strained, teetering on the brink of collapse. One evening, as Jack returned home, he discovered Emily fighting back tears. "Jack, I can't shake the feeling that you're hiding something from me," she said, her voice trembling. Her pain pricked at his heart, exposing the raw truth he had desperately tried to bury. "You've been distant, and it feels like you're not really here with me anymore," she continued. His instinct was to deny it, to assure her everything was fine, but the weight of those words twisted the knife of guilt deeper. "I'm just overwhelmed, Em. It's work, you know," he replied, the lie tasting bitter on his tongue. But Emily could see through his facade. She had known him too long to be easily fooled. As she wiped away silent tears, Jack felt the girl he had once fallen in love with slip further away. "What have I done?" he wondered. What could have been a moment of honesty transformed into a continued charade as he watched her retreat into her world of pain? And then came a Friday night that would change everything. Jack had planned to meet Sarah, believing the night would reignite the exhilaration he craved. But the confrontation he had been avoiding collided head-on with emotions he could no longer ignore. He received a text from Emily, a simple request. "Can we talk when you get home?" The weight of the message felt monumental. Fighting against an invisible tide, Jack drove home with unease washing over him. His heart raced as he walked through the door, and Emily's anxious posture on the couch offered a haunting reality check. This is it. The moment of truth has arrived. "Hey, I'm home," he managed, trying to keep his voice steady. But the discomfort in the air was palpable. Emily sat tense, eyes guarded yet fearfully vulnerable. "Jack, we need to have an honest conversation," she implored, her voice shaking. Jack took a deep breath. He sensed the turning point was near, yet every cell in his body screamed at him to delay. "What's on your mind?" he asked weakly, dread settling heavy in his stomach. "I can't shake the feeling that something has changed between us. Please, just be honest with me. Are you cheating on me?" Her voice cracked, and the accusation felt like a knife twisting in his gut. Jack froze, the silence stretching into an unbearable void. In her eyes, he saw love, pain, and a mixture of hope and fear. He could no longer lie, could no longer juggle the weight of two relationships. "Emily," he started, but words failed him. "No more games, Jack. Just tell me the truth," she demanded, her voice rising in desperation. The moment was here, the moment he had feared and longed for. Jack struggled with the enormity of it all, anxiety swirling within him. Should he reveal the truth? The complete, humbling truth that would crush the heart of the woman who still believed in him? In that moment, the walls he had built around himself began to crumble. What if she never forgave him? What if this shattered their lives forever? The weight of crawling back to the surface felt stifling. Finally, he found his voice, trembling with the enormity of the truth. "Yes, I've been unfaithful," he whispered, his heart breaking as the words fell from his lips. The shock reverberated through the room, and he watched as disbelief washed over Emily's face. The fragile bond they had built began to fragment, shattering like glass before his eyes as she processed the betrayal. "How could you do this to me?" she whispered, tears flowing freely now. The love they had shared morphed into something darker, more sorrowful, and all Jack could do was wish he could take it all back. The silence that ensued felt like an eternity, punctuated only by Emily's muffled sobs. Jack stood rooted to the spot, his spirit crushed beneath the weight of his confession. The truth hung in the air, suffocating and unyielding. Every breath he took felt like a betrayal, a reminder of the love he had shattered. Emily, her face twisted with anger and heartache, finally looked up at him. "How long?" she demanded, her voice sharp and pained. "How long have you been seeing her?" Each word cut deeper than the last, barbed like arrows, piercing his heart. "Just a few months," he admitted quietly, feeling the heat of shame wash over him. "But it meant nothing. I swear." The instant the words left his mouth, he recognized their futility. They were desperate pleas, empty echoes amid the devastation he had caused. "A few months?" she scoffed, wiping her tears as if they could wash away the betrayal. "You've been living a double life while I've put my heart and soul into our marriage. Our dreams, our future. You've thrown it all away for what? A fleeting affair?" Jack could barely meet her gaze. He felt small and ashamed, handcuffed by his deceit. "I never meant to hurt you, Emily. I was confused and dash." "Confused?" she interrupted, anger resonating in her words. "You think that excuses this? I've been sensing something was wrong, and I kept trying to connect with you. You let me think everything was fine." The pain in her voice rocked him, leaving him feeling like a stranger in his own home. "I was scared," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know how to tell you. I thought it would just go away." As they stood there in the dim light of the living room, memories flooded Jack's mind, moments filled with laughter, love, and a sense of belonging that felt irretrievably distant now. He alone had destroyed it all. "I can't just pretend everything's fine after this, Jack," Emily whispered, her voice breaking anew. "You've shattered my trust. I don't think I can ever see you the same way again." With those words, a part of Jack died. "What can I say? I'm sorry. I can try to fix this," he suggested tentatively, desperate for any avenue back to her heart. Emily shook her head slowly, disappointment washing over her features. "No amount of words will fix this. You've made your choice." She turned away, and Jack's heart sank further. "Emily, please," he pleaded, but she stepped into the hallway, her emotional distance widening with every pace. He felt suffocated, like a twisted vine wrapping around his throat, squeezing tighter with each moment of silence. As she packed a bag to stay with her sister, Jack's world crumbled. How could I have let it get this far? The realization struck like lightning, illuminating the darkness that had enveloped him. "Where are you going?" he asked, voice strained. "We can work through this, Em. Please don't leave. I need time away from you, Jack." "Time to think," she replied coldly, her resolve palpable. "You've made your choice, and it wasn't me." The pain in her voice struck deeper than the truth itself. That night, as Jack sat in the dimly lit living room, alone with his thoughts, he felt the emptiness settle into his bones. Without Emily's warmth or laughter, the house felt like a ghost of its former self. The ache of betrayal thundered through him as he considered the magnitude of his mistakes. What had he sacrificed? What had he lost? Meanwhile, Emily drove through the city, tears streaming down her cheeks. Each swoosh of the windshield wipers matched the rhythm of her faltering heart. How could everything fall apart so quickly? Memories flooded her mind. The laughter in their kitchen, their plans for the future, the dreams they had woven together. Arriving at her sister's apartment, Emily was greeted with hugs and concern. "What happened?" her sister, Laura, asked, her eyes wide with empathy. As Emily recounted the night's devastating events, her heart ached. "I can't believe he would do this to me, Laura," she sobbed. "I knew something wasn't right, but I never imagined he would hurt me like this. I just don't know how to forgive him." "Well, you need to prioritize yourself right now," Laura suggested. "Take the time to heal, and don't rush back into anything. You deserve someone who gives you their all, not someone who keeps secrets." As the reality settled, Emily felt a flicker of determination ignite within her. She deserved more than betrayal. She deserved love and respect. Deciding to take time for herself would be the first step toward healing. But the path ahead seemed daunting and uncertain. Meanwhile, Jack was left in the haunting aftermath of his choices. The silence in the house stretched like a taut wire, filled with reminders of the love he had cast aside. He felt utterly alone, with Sarah now acting cold toward him and Emily gone. He tried contacting Sarah, his heart racing, desperate to find solace in the arms of his secret lover. But those moments felt hollow. "Jack, this is a lot to handle," Sarah replied when he finally reached her. She had enjoyed their escapades, but was unwilling to be another source of pain in such a fragile situation. "You have to figure this out with Emily first." Jack's heart sank at her words. For the first time, he had to confront a simple truth. He had destroyed both relationships. He had inflated his ego, but now he was living in decay, facing an emotional wasteland that he had created. Weeks passed, and Jack found himself adrift, wrestling with the lingering ache of regret. Guilt washed over him like an unending tide as he watched Emily slowly begin to rebuild her life, seeking comfort in the support of her friends and family. He could see from their social media posts and mutual friends that she was trying to move on, finding warmth in the arms of those who truly cared for her. On the other hand, Jack was left to reflect on his choices. He spent his evenings ensconced in bitter solitude, consumed by self-loathing. Every moment spent alone felt like an opportunity lost, a reminder of the love he had betrayed. One day, as he walked through the city, gathering his thoughts, he stumbled upon a bookstore. As he entered, he was greeted by the comforting scent of aged paper and coffee. The warmth of the shop enveloped him as he wandered through the aisles, finding solace in the pages of novels. His heart began to gently mend itself as he read the profound words about love, loss, and the lessons embedded within heartache. In the quiet corners of the bookstore, he could see couples sharing laughter and warmth, and he couldn't help but envy their connection. Each passing day became a reminder of what he had sacrificed at the altar of desire, and he knew it was time for him to confront the repercussions of his actions. With each story he read, Jack felt the seeds of introspection take root. The echoes of his past choices haunted him, pushing him to change, to apologize, to redeem himself, if given the chance. But as the days stretched into weeks, the distance from Emily felt insurmountable. He began crafting a letter, pouring his heart into words he had long held dormant. He would need to take responsibility for his mistakes, to acknowledge the depth of his betrayal. But would she ever be willing to listen? The anticipation of finally reaching out to Emily coursed through Jack like a double-edged sword. He spent days rehearsing what he would say, poring over each word as if it held the key to her heart. He sat at the local cafe, clutching his coffee and pen, surrounded by the sounds of laughter and casual conversation. The world continued to turn, each laugh and smile feeling like a fresh wound deep within his chest. Why did I let it come to this? His mind raced as he drafted the letter, pouring out everything he felt, but ultimately dreading what it meant. How could he articulate the depth of his regret? He felt like a schoolboy trying to win back the heart of a girl he had wronged, burdened by the consequences of his actions. Finally, after days of agonizing over his emotions, he penned a heartfelt letter. Dear Emily, I don't expect you to read this. If you do, I pray for your understanding. I've hurt you in a way I never thought possible, and there are no words that can undo the damage I've caused. I acted selfishly, allowing my desires to overshadow the love we built together. I stand here, broken and filled with regret. You have every right to be angry with me. I betrayed your trust, our vows, and everything we had dreamed of. I can only imagine the pain I inflicted on you as I forced you to question my love and fidelity. Every moment away from you haunts me. The days spent in silence, the laughter that rings hollow, all serve as constant reminders of my failure. I remember our shared dreams, the warmth of your smile, and the way we held each other in our darkest moments. I miss you, Em. If you're willing, I want to find a way to make this right. If there's any remaining love between us, or if there's any hope for redemption. I understand if you need time, or if you're not ready to hear from me. I'll respect your wishes, but please know how deeply I'm sorry. You deserve someone who is completely committed to you, someone who cherishes every moment. I hope, more than anything, that you find happiness, even if it's not with me. Your love was a light in my life, and I only hope to earn a chance to bask in it once more. Sincerely, Jack. He sealed the letter with uncertainty simmering in his core. This was his act of vulnerability, a chance to show Emily the depth of his remorse. But he also had to grapple with the profound possibility that she might not respond, might not hear him out, which filled him with dread. Armed with his courage and the letter, Jack approached Emily's sister Laura, seeking her help in facilitating the letter's delivery. As he handed it over, a mix of hope and reluctance washed over him. Laura promised to deliver it, but her expression bore a hint of skepticism. "Are you sure you're prepared for whatever happens next?" she cautioned, eyeing him keenly. "I don't know if I'm ready," he admitted, "but I need her to know how I truly feel." Days dragged on filled with anxious anticipation. Jack's mind raced with scenarios. What if Emily tore up the letter? What if she didn't care? What if she was moving on, leaving him drowning in his self-inflicted sorrow? Each thought was a consuming reminder of the consequences of his betrayal. Then finally, a week later, Laura called. "Jack, do you have a moment?" Emily read your letter. His heart raced as he listened. Was this a sign of hope? "She's been processing everything," Laura relayed cautiously. "She needs time, but she is willing to meet with you, to hear you out." An overwhelming rush of emotion flooded Jack, anxiousness mixed with a hint of exhilaration. "I'll do whatever it takes," he replied, ready to face whatever would come next. The agreed-upon day arrived, and as the hours crept closer to the meeting, Jack's nerves transformed into palpable anxiety. He stood outside his apartment, restless energy bubbling within him. Rain began to sprinkle down, mirroring the tension he felt inside. When the time arrived, he found himself sitting at a quiet cafe overlooking the bustling street, his heart racing with anticipation. He was early, rehearsing his words as he fidgeted with his hands. What would he say to fix everything? Several moments later, Emily walked through the door, her presence like a breath of fresh air. Her eyes, once so vibrant and full of life, now held a mixture of hurt and guardedness. It struck him deep, but the sight of her filled him with both love and regret. "Hi," she said softly as she approached, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hi," he replied, his heart pounding. There was an awkward silence as they both took their seats, the weight of their shared past hanging heavily between them. "Thanks for agreeing to meet," he ventured after a moment, the air thick with unspoken words. Emily nodded, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "I got your letter," she began slowly. "I can't say it didn't hurt to read it, but it also made me realize how far we've drifted and how much I need to process everything." Jack felt a pang of regret at the reminder of the pain he had caused her. "I understand," he replied earnestly, trying to hold her gaze. "I can't imagine how you're feeling, but I'm here, ready to face the consequences of my actions." Emily's eyes softened slightly, but the pain was still evident. "It's hard to reconcile the person I thought you were with who you've become." Her voice wavered, and Jack felt the walls between them begin to shift. "I didn't give you the loyalty you deserved," he confessed, his heart racing. "I allowed my insecurities and desires to rule my life. I wasn't the man you married, and I deeply regret that." As they exchanged pleasantries, Jack could see the vulnerability emerging in Emily's eyes, tempered by her pain. "I need to know how you plan to make this right," she demanded, courage tinging her voice. "How can I trust you again?" In that moment, he realized rebuilding trust wouldn't be instantaneous. It would require effort, transparency, and a willingness to heal. "I'll do whatever it takes," he said desperately. "I'm committed to rebuilding our relationship. Whatever you need, even if it means starting over." Emily's gaze was piercing, and he felt exposed under the intensity of her scrutiny. "Trust isn't magically regained, Jack. It will take time. Time we lost while you chased a fantasy." "I understand, and I'm willing to put in the effort," he replied earnestly. Together, they discussed the painful journey ahead, acknowledging the scars that remained while sowing the seeds of hope for a future where they could both heal. That day marked the quiet dawn of change, the flicker of light illuminating the shadows of despair. Jack knew it would be an uphill battle, but as long as he had the chance to make things right with Emily, he would embark on any journey, however long it took. Days turned into weeks, and the process of rebuilding what had been shattered began. Jack, determined yet realistic, understood that this wouldn't be a quick fix. Nothing about their situation was easy, nor should it be. Emily would reach out occasionally, asking how he was doing, but they kept things light. Their conversations revolved around mundane details, yet it felt like a fragile thread connecting their worlds. Jack worked tirelessly to show her the man he could be. He went to couples counseling alone in the hopes it would help clarify his intentions and heart. Meanwhile, Emily focused on herself, attending therapy sessions to process her feelings, anger, betrayal, and eventually, the flicker of hope. Her heart ached for the days of laughter and warmth she once shared with Jack, but she knew rebuilding trust required introspection and boundaries. One brisk Saturday morning, she received a message from Jack asking if she would like to meet for coffee. The nerves bubbled within her as she contemplated the offer. Could they really reconcile? Every instinct told her to guard her heart, yet the desire to reconnect was undeniable. Later that day, as she arrived at the cafe, Jack greeted her with a tentative smile, his eyes now filled with determination. They had chosen a familiar spot, where memories danced between them like ghosts. "Hey," he said softly, the warmth in his voice bringing a hint of nostalgia. "Hi," she replied, their eyes briefly locking before she looked away, uncertainty still nagging at her heart. "I know our conversations have been superficial, but I wanted to check in and see how you're feeling," Jack said, genuine concern threading through his words. Emily took a deep breath, internalizing the complicated emotions rising within her. "I've been processing, working through the pain," she admitted. "It's not easy, Jack. I need to know you're serious about this." "I am," he insisted, urgency seeping through his tone. "I've been putting in the work, and I'll keep working on myself because I want to earn back your trust, and I don't want to lose you." Her heart ached at the sincerity of his words. Part of her longed for the love they had shared, while another part feared it was merely a facade. But in that moment, she knew that embracing vulnerability was essential for both of them. "I need to see action," Emily stated firmly, searching his eyes for conviction. Words lost their meaning somewhere amidst the lies. "Then let me show you," Jack replied with renewed determination. They spoke of boundaries and expectations. Their hopes poured into every sentence, a slow yet steady bridge each was willing to build. Over the following weeks, their meetings became more frequent, each moment layered with tension but also warmth. Jack shared his journey through therapy, explaining how he was learning to understand his behaviors and emotional triggers. Emily listened intently. She saw glimpses of the man she had fallen in love with, the vulnerability behind the facade. Every moment felt like stepping into uncharted territory, where emotions reigned supreme, the exuberance of hope mingling with the shadows of doubt. Jack focused on transparency, encouraging open dialogue about their feelings, fear, uncertainty, and dreams of rekindling the connection they had lost. Slowly, the cracks in Emily's heart began to mend, but the journey was fraught with setbacks. She often felt overwhelmed by heartache, moments when the anger and sadness resurfaced. Jack empathized with her struggles, not recoiling from her pain, but embracing it, showing steady support. One night, as they sat on the porch of a mutual friend's backyard, watching the fire crackle, Emily turned to Jack. "It's hard navigating this new territory. I want to trust you, but sometimes fear holds me back." "I get it," he responded, sincere understanding etched across his features. "I'll choose patience, and I don't want to rush anything. Just know that."